你是不是常看到一种贴文，不要说这个字，要用另外一个字比较专业。例如，如果你想听的比较专业，要用 sufficient 来代替 enough。那今天让我们来看看，这是否是必要的？我们是真的需要用这些所谓比较专业的字吗？Hello， 欢迎来到 Executive Plus 主管与沟通力的 Podcast。I'm Sherry, an educator, certified coach, and style enthusiast. 我相信专业有效的沟通是语言跟逻辑的完美结合。
And I'm Nick, a startup consultant, corporate trainer, and late-night gaming junkie. I believe great communication requires the right mindset and solid frameworks.
我们希望带给大家职场英语的技能、跨文化沟通技巧与其他能帮助您成为出色领导者的工具。
Join us each week as we share our experience, research, and methodologies to take your communication and language skills from good to great. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Executive Plus podcast. In the past, you've heard us talk about the context of using this versus that, and the danger of getting thrown into the idea that there is specific, sophisticated business language. We've also in the past covered people like Scott Adams, the famed writer of the Dilbert cartoon and several business books, on his key tips for clear and concise business writing. Today, we're going to share with you another expert, Kaylee Moore, a copywriter, especially in the e-commerce and SaaS, who has an amazing amount of success and who broke down this really great chart of don't write when you can write. And it's basically looking at all these sophisticated, complicated, and convoluted ways of writing something that should be very simple and straightforward.
所以前些日子啊 Nick 就跟我分享了这个贴文 I think it came from her Twitter account、然后我看到我就发现还蛮好玩的 So I'm gonna actually give you guys an example 所以在这个贴文呢当然如果你再点下讲义的话你都可以看到这个贴文 But for the podcast, for example, she says, don't write at a time when you can write when. Don't write currently when you can write now.And don't write requirements when you can write needs. 你会不会发现呢？其实他讲的 don't write 这些都是我们所谓比较专业、比较厉害的这种商用英语的字。那反而他写 when you can write 这些字都是我们平常可能在国中就会学到的这些字，而且这个 information 如果你把它倒过来，好像就是平常我们有时候在市面上看到一些贴文，就是要写这个，不要用这个。
And I really like this post because one of the things that we hear all the time is, I don't have enough vocabulary. My vocabulary really is just not enough to sound like a native speaker.So why I like this list is because she takes a lot of these quote-unquote important vocabulary words that, of course, people were cramming for to take TOEFL or TOEIC or GRE, and she turns them around just to make them simple. For example, something like initiate instead of begin or start. A lot of people will just think that initiate, like we need to initiate this plan. It is really important that we initiate this meeting.But then you could just say start or begin. It's really important that we get started with our meeting today.
And I remember back when I was in college, 我们的 professor 都会跟我讲说，英文写作英文就是 KISS， 这是很基本的一个 principle. Then it actually means keep it simple and stupid. 那当时我听想说，What do you mean stupid? 但是在很多写作的一些 principle 都说你不要用那种很大的字啊 or 好像你用一个字就可以代替三个字的话那就是 do it for the one word. So 其实这个 principle 这个原则是一样的，只是有时候我们在学习语言的时候你会认为觉得自己不够，我就必须要去弥补用一些比较听起来比较厉害的字，但是有的时候我们就会忽视了我们真正想要传达的这个 message 它的本意是什么。
The idea behind this would be the clarity of your message is drastically more important than sounding fancy.
Yeah.
Now, we want to make a clear distinction between fancy and professional.
Yeah.
In certain context within your business, there are particular terms that you need to be able to use in order to sound professional and within the realm. But that means that when you combine all of your fancy TOEIC, GRE level vocabulary around these professional terms, the term itself gets muddled. You're not actually focusing on the terms that are professional. You're just trying to make your sentence sound really fancy, which means that anyone from the outside may not actually get your point because they're digging out what is the key term. So in this particular case, Kaylee Moore is talking about writing, business writing, whether it's on your website or whether it's your business plan. But this is also true for presentation. When someone is listening to your ideas, you don't want them getting caught up in the vocabulary of your ideas. You want them to focus on the content of what you have to say. And the content should be very clear and very professional, meaning anything that does not owe itself to being professional or it doesn't make your message clear is unnecessary.
And I think a lot of people, when they do these presentation or any kind of communication, there's two ways to think, right? One way is that how am I going to convey my message clearly to my audience? Another way is that how am I going to impress them? So I would always say go to the first one. The first is like the most important thing. 我要怎么样很清楚的把我的 message 告诉我的听众跟我的观众，而不是去想我要怎么样来用我的字去 impress 人家，因为这个时候你可能就会用一些所谓专业字，但是当你在用这些字的时候，你可能就会好像你会把你原本的意思变得比较不清楚。So always think about how do I communicate clearly to my audience? All right, so let's give you guys some examples what we're talking about. 如果我今天要讲这一句，那我要形容就是在职场上面应该更多的女性作为主管。What I want to convey is the fact that there should be more female individuals in the executive positions. I mean, it sounds fancy, right? Sounds professional, sounds fancy. 但是我算了一算，大概这个句子里面有19个字。But actually, I can definitely convey the same thing in way less the words. So I can just say, I believe there should be more women in the executive positions.
Yeah, or you could even take it down and say, I believe there should be more female executives. And the clarity is the same. Now, if you went with that first sentence, what I want to convey is the fact that there should be. It sounds fanciful. But the reality is, if I have a certain number of words on a page before someone thinks my email's too long, or I only have a certain amount of time in my presentation, then it's about bringing down to the clearest, shortest possible sentence. I believe there should be more women in executive positions. We actually picked out a very popular English learning book, business English learning book that you can pick up at most bookstores in Taiwan. And here are examples of the types of sentences they give that also create this problem. For example, they write, I couldn't agree more with what has been suggested, which simply could just be, I agree with your suggestions. And the other half of that is the fact that they are advocating for a passive use of the language. I couldn't agree more with what has been suggested. Very simply, our brain does not process passive language very easily. And there are only very specific times where it is clearer to be passive. So don't do that. Just, I agree with your suggestions.
It's very simple.
Another example from that same book is, we are on the same page when it comes to this issue. Unnecessary.
Yeah.
We are on the same page.
Yeah, that's it. We're on the same page. 所以其实我们这些 example 不只是用在写作上面，在你做 presentation, communication 上面也一样。If you can just convey your message in like the, 5 words, go ahead and do that. 真的不需要去加长这个句子或特别用一些什么样的字。那当然，专有名词是专有名词。Professional terms or phrases, that's another story. But what we're trying to say is that just make sure that your message is clear and don't try to think too much about impressing others.
We hope that this reminder on keeping it simple and stupid, aka being professional and clear over sounding fancy and sophisticated. Be sure to check out the show notes for a post of a list of words that Kaylee Moore recommends that you consider the simpler and clearer alternative. We'll talk to you guys next time.
Bye.
Bye.
The Executive Plus podcast is a Presentality Group production, produced and hosted by Sherry Fang and Nick Howard. You can search us on Facebook, 主管英文 Executive Plus. You can also find us on Instagram, Communicate